This is the podcast pit, brought to you by Ben Media.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is Saturday evening, and of course you know what that means. It is time to talk some wrestling. My mic went out there. There we go. It is time to talk some wrestling. This is the podcast pit. I am your host, former professional wrestler, promoter of Voltage Wrestling, jack of all trades, master of what I do not know, Mike Raddick. And beside me, ladies and gentlemen, no, Rennis did not shave his head and become a St. Louis Cardinals fan. He's actually not in the studio today. Kyle Reyes is filling in for him and doing a valiant effort here thus far.
Valiant effort indeed. Just getting started.
Just getting started.
Yep,
just getting started. So it's his first time, guys. Be gentle. Be gentle.
Not that gentle.
But Rennis is going to be in the comments here with us today. Unfortunately, and LAJ can back me up on this, we've had this guy, Captain Decapitate, on the show, and he's been just kind of running amok.
Oh, yeah.
So last week, we were supposed to have Jeremy Grimes on. He tries to, he basically pays Jeremy Grimes money not to come on our show. And this week, he parks his boat in front of Rennis's car. Rennis, he got blocked in, so he couldn't make the show today. It's just...
Yeah, he's a piece of work.
Yeah, but Rennis will be back with us next week. We've already made alternate transportation accommodations for our co-host. And we hope to see him back here very, very soon. Ladies and gentlemen, though, we don't want to start this off on a sad note, but we kind of have to right now. We have just received word. It apparently broke earlier today. Former professional wrestler Danny Hodge has passed away. Danny Hodge, he was a former United States Navy veteran. He was trained by Leroy McGurk and Ed Strangler Lewis. So that's how far we're going back here. And Hodge's first rivalry of professional wrestling was for the NWA Junior Heavyweight title against Angelo Savaldi.
Wow, that's going back.
Yeah, so this guy, he was also a professional boxer. Apparently, he won the 1958 Chicago Golden Gloves at heavyweight. He finished his amateur boxing career, 17 wins, no losses. 12 of those wins were knockouts.
Damn.
Do not mess with this man.
No.
But this man, he has passed away at 88. We want to send condolences out to his family, and Godspeed.
Thanks for a life well lived.
Yes, a life well lived. But before we get started with any more news, we do have to pay the bills here. Our broadcast tonight is brought to you by the good folks at One Up IT Consulting. Ladies and gentlemen, if you own a small business out there, you do not want to do the job to bad IT, contact the folks. They'll provide you technical support, system security, and most importantly, peace of mind. I just learned a fun fact this week.
What's that?
You know 70% of cyber attacks are performed on businesses with 100 employees or less?
Really?
Yeah.
I did not
That's
know that.
crazy. It's crazy. You do not want to do, I stress to you this right now, you do not want to do the job of bad IT. Contact the good folks at oneupitconsulting.com. You can also reach them by phone at 301-799-3553. One Up IT Consulting, managed services with care.
Well done.
Well done.
Yeah.
All right. So, professional wrestling this week, Monday Night Raw. As usual, it was shite.
Yeah, that's what I unfortunately I didn't get to watch it, but I have not heard anything good coming out of Raw in a long time.
Yeah.
Seen anything good.
And this week was no different. I will say this because I don't want to sit here and crap on Monday Night Raw like it's a trendy thing to do every week. However, I did the stuff with the Bray Wyatt storyline with Randy Orton. It looks to be continuing.
Yep.
Did see the excellent segment by Randy Orton and Alexa Bliss this week. And after setting Randy Orton on fire.
Or Bray Wyatt, or Randy Orton.
Oh,
setting Bray Wyatt on fire.
Yes, Randy Orton setting Bray Wyatt on fire. Excellent segment. Alexa Bliss is creepy AF.
Oh, she is just pure gold and money right now.
Yeah.
Like the few times that I have been tuning into WWE lately have been because of her.
Yeah, her range as an actress right now is just incredible.
It's just absolutely phenomenal. Yeah.
I do like what they're doing with the Hurt Business. It's good to see Cedric Alexander back on TV, a hell of a talent, phenomenal talent. Also good to see Shelton Benjamin on TV
For sure.
after winning the tag titles this week.
It took out the New Day, right?
Yeah, they took out the New Day, won the tag team titles, and it was a really classy move afterwards. He immediately left the building to go celebrate that win with Shad Gaspard's son.
that was excellent.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's completely awesome. But the combo, Lashley, Cedric, Shelton, and MVP as the mouthpiece, that's money. It's money.
Absolutely. Now, MVP really needs to be congratulated a lot for what he's brought back to wrestling here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen on Twitter just blowing up, make this guy the heavyweight champion.
He's such a phenomenal talent, and has been that way for quite some time.
Yeah, he's always been money every time.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember watching back in the late 2000s.
Yeah,
when he was real big. Every time he came on, it was entertaining.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. AEW Dynamite this week again. While I do like what they're doing, I love what they're doing with Sting. There's so much intrigue, so much mystery.
They haven't.
I know your boy Darby Allin.
They haven't misplayed Sting yet.
Yeah,
they haven't overstretched it to anything. They're not. They're taking their time with it. They're clearly building to something with my boy Darby Allin, which I'm so freaking excited for. But no, Dynamite I'm a little bit more familiar with. It wasn't a bad show this week.
No. No. So yeah, Dynamite. Dynamite this week. I still feel that they're just not following up properly with this Kenny Omega storyline.
Yeah, that I will say, it does feel like they're dropping the ball on it a little bit. And AEW does have a habit of building a storyline and then kind of ignoring it for a minute and then bringing it back, and that does keep things fresh. But you can't do that with your main title.
No,
that has to be showcased pretty much every week.
No. The thing is here too, as well. I'm looking at the other storylines on the show. You have the stuff with MJF and Chris Jericho. Great stuff so far. You're waiting for MJF to just stick the knife in the back, and I'm just waiting for it. I'm waiting for it. It's coming. I don't know if you saw this week with Santana and Ortiz. I think one of them lost a loved one, and MJF comes up and kind of comforts them, and it's just you can see he's trying to establish trust.
Yep.
And it's not going to last long.
No, I mean they're definitely building to a usurper storyline here.
Oh yeah.
MJF's the fresh blood. He's young. He's got his whole career ahead of him. Jericho is Jericho. He's God, but at a certain point, God's gonna retire here. So
yeah, we got Rennis in the chat. He can't wait for the backstab here. Rennis, your boy Captain Crunch is in the chat here. Now I know he kept you from coming in the studio here, Captain Crunch. Like we mentioned earlier, good old Captain Decapitate. Blocking Rennis's car in. Yeah, you can already see it starting. And ladies and gentlemen, if you can, if you're out there watching this right now, if you could go ahead and like and share this broadcast, it'd be greatly appreciated. We thank you. Kyle thanks you.
I do.
LAJ thanks you. The podcast pit thanks you. But yes, back to AEW Dynamite. With the MJF thing, I think that's going to be great. But I don't so they were preempted this week.
Yeah.
They were preempted by the NBA. Game. Man, I don't know if you saw the tweets with NBA fans this week on Chris Jericho. They were not kind.
No,
they were not kind.
No, they weren't. And because I was reading that the next day because Abaddon tweeted something I think her tweet was body shaming. Never heard of him or something like that. Just completely throwing shade at all that. And they're making fun of Chris Jericho's physique. He's 51 years old.
That man's 51 and is probably in better shape than most of the people that were watching that.
He is absolutely in better shape than almost everybody. He's certainly. I'll never say I'll never make fun of anybody for being look at me, But yeah, no, that was absurd.
Oh yeah, it was just I cannot believe the amount of tweets that got.
Yeah.
It's just they tuned in and it's they haven't seen Chris Jericho since the Attitude Era or something.
Yeah, it's they haven't seen him since 1999. I think the last time they saw him was when he had that goatee, probably the old Pharaoh goatee.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, this just in, folks. People age.
Yeah, people do age. People do age.
Even professional athletes.
Yeah. Don't hate on the demo god.
No, never.
Yes. Because when you hate on them, you might get it.
Yeah.
Had to go there, but no, still, a solid episode by Dynamite, despite I still think they're not following up with the Kenny Omega thing quite as well as they should.
They've taken a lot of it to Impact, which is, like, on one hand, it's great. Like, this is a wrestling fan's dream to watch these companies work together and, like, cross-platform. Like, this is fantastic. Kenny Omega being on Impact a couple weeks ago was the first time I had watched Impact in at least 4 years. Like,
it had been 10 years for me.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously they're doing something right, but like, it does feel like they need to do something on Dynamite to really follow it up. Now, his match with Janela was excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was a nice showcasing of Janela. A couple spots in there that made you think, like, it's not just a work.
I'll be honest with you. There were a couple of things I saw in Janela's match that I didn't quite care for. I think he could have taken a little bit better care of Kenny. On that tope or that suicida tope on the outside.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? However, still, a solid showing by Dynamite. I'm looking forward to the follow up on this MJF thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But
there is one thing on AEW I'd like to talk about real quick, if I may. I'm absolutely head over heels in love with Abaddon.
Oh, yeah?
And this Living Dead Girl character. I think it was on Dark this week.
Yeah.
She came out and attacked Sheeta after her match, and then she bit her in the neck, like full on like zombie bite. It was phenomenal. It was just she is so overly committed to her gimmick. And like when you have a gimmick like that, you have to commit to that. And like I'm continually impressed. I was in love with Britt Baker as far as the AEW Dynamite women go, and then Abaddon came in and ate her, and now I'm all about her Abaddon. So I love the crazy gimmicks. Luchasaurus, Abaddon, Darby Allin. You guys have my heart.
Yeah, and Luchasaurus and I can't remember Jungle Boy Jack Perry.
Yeah,
I don't know why I keep forgetting his name, but they had quite a good match this week on Dynamite.
Oh, Jungle Boy's going places. I mean,
who are the rappers? Are the Acclaimed? Am I right there?
Yeah.
Those guys are phenomenal.
Yeah, they were on with SCU this week, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Those guys were phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely.
I normally I don't like when people rehash these gimmicks, like the rapper gimmick. I think it's somebody did that and did it pretty well. You know who? We can't see him, but
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, but somebody did that pretty well in the past. I feel like they're taking it even a step above that.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing a wonderful job. But on to things outside of Dynamite, we have found out this week Daniel Bryan is confirming himself to be the first participant in the 2021 Royal Rumble.
Wow.
Yeah, Daniel Bryan.
Yeah, God, I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, like part of me never wants to see him wrestle again because I just don't want him to die in the ring. But he's still one of the most exciting wrestlers on the planet to watch.
Yeah, him and AJ Styles, like still as good as they ever were.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I feel like they don't age.
No, they really don't.
No.
Now, they've been around forever too. It's crazy. I mean, I don't think. Maybe AJ's in his 40s, maybe, but Daniel Bryan certainly isn't yet.
I want to say he's late 30s. He's either late 30s or
but it's amazing
40s.
Just how long they've been around and at the top of their game, and they just don't stop.
Yeah, Daniel Bryan's been around since what, 99?
At least something like that. Yeah,
99 started out. He was one of Shawn Michaels' students, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
But I want to put that aside here for a second. We're going to go ahead and start moving on with the show here a little bit, folks. If you see the World Heavyweight Championship in front of Kyle Reyes right here, tonight we're going to tell you how you can win the World Heavyweight Championship. We're going to wait until after our interview that we have coming up. It's going to be at the very end of the show, and you want to pay attention to this. You sitting at home, you guys in the chat could be the next World Heavyweight Champion.
And has nothing to do with beating me up in the parking lot.
No, you don't even have to fight for it. You just win it. You just win it. But ladies and gentlemen, We've got a special guest on the show. Earlier this afternoon, I had an interview with former ECW superstar and a guy who toured up and down the independents here, especially in the four-state region, for a number of years. We spoke to ECW original Julio Dinero. We spoke to him about starting out in wrestling, wrestling for the WWF, ECW, WCCW, all within the span of 3 years. If you guys aren't familiar with Julio's work, he was on TV pretty much every other week during the 90s. I mean, he was one of the premier enhancement talents around until he got his break with ECW. We talk about that. We talk about wrestling on the independents, and we're going to go ahead and play that interview for you here in its entirety, and we hope you enjoy it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back here with the Podcast Pit, and I have a special guest with us today. This man was a fixture in area wrestling in the early and mid-90s. In the late 90s, you probably saw him on WCW, WWE television here and there, and also in the ever-popular promotion, the ECW. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the one and only Julio Dinero.
Hey, thanks, everybody. What's up, man? How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. How have you been?
Life is good, dude. I would love to tell you I have all these tribulations and problems, but Julio Dinero's life is pretty damn good. All the money I made in pro wrestling allowed me to buy a house, and I have 3 kids and a wife. Miss Michelle, she was my manager. If anyone who's crazy enough to have followed my career would know, and we're doing really well. So everything's great.
Good to hear. And it looks like your Dolphins are doing pretty good this year.
Yeah, this year, we'll see. We'll see how the end of the season goes. It's probably going to be, maybe get lucky, break into the playoffs and get hammered by a better team. But I feel like next year will be a better year. And the year
after. Showing up to the playoffs is an accomplishment. I will say.
It is. It is. Especially for them, for sure.
All right. So we brought you on here. We wanted to talk about your professional wrestling career. Professional wrestling was much, much different in the mid to late 90s than it is today. And wanted to just bring you on to kind of give our viewers a little bit of insight on how that world was, especially in the independent scene back in the day. And basically, talk about your times and your life and times in professional wrestling here. So I'm looking at a Wikipedia page. This is all the information I can pull up here on you. I'm going off of Wikipedia and the history of WWE.com. Shout out to Grant Calthon for putting together a phenomenal website.
Wrestle Crap. I might be on that one. No, I'm just kidding.
You might be on Wrestle Crap.
I heard about that website. I haven't really checked it out, but I think it's when people get dumped on their heads by accident or fall out of the ring and hurt themselves and in bad spots and terrible promos. I'd probably be at least on some of that, I'm sure, if I Googled myself on that.
Like that and Botchamania.
I have to go to that one day. Yeah.
Botchamania is pretty good.
I'm sure I'm all over that too, unless someone had no time to waste putting up my horrible career up on those websites. But regardless of that, I had a lot of fun with my career, so I make fun of it a lot because I'm part-time comedian at my house, really not anywhere else, but at home I'm a part-time comedian.
All right, so I have you here. It says you began your wrestling career training under the tutelage of Hack Myers and Axel Rock.
Hack Myers. Yeah. So it was cool about that is I lived in Silver Spring, Maryland. I was a college student at the University of Maryland, studying communications because I figured, if you can see, I'm a pretty skinny guy working out for a long time and my arms only got to this big. So I didn't know if I'd ever make a wrestling career out of this, but I wanted to do wrestling some way or the other. So I think maybe I'll do a broadcasting stint or something like that, not knowing how difficult all that is, just figured I'd get my broadcast degree at the University of Maryland, but I still wanted to wrestle. So I went to the Neil Superior School of Pro Wrestling, which you probably know on Dual Highway in Hagerstown. And I met up with guys like Shane Shadows and Doug Delicious, who back then might have been known as, he wasn't as delicious then. He had another name. He's going to hate my guts if he ever sees this, but I can't remember his first wrestling name before Doug Delicious, but it could have been Doug Deeds or something like that, right?
Dirty Doug Deeds.
Dirty. And he was dirty. You know what I said about him? He always wore like dirty shirts and like dirty pants. He was just like a dirty guy. Anyway, so like he left a construction site doing the mud spot, I'm digging the hole. All right, go to wrestling school. All right, I'm going to wrestling school. So anyway, met up with those guys. Their school was about maybe an hour and 15 minutes from my house in Silver Spring. I did find another school north of Baltimore. It was called the MEWF, had a wrestling academy. If you remember the MEWF. Remember that wrestling organization? Mid-East Wrestling Federation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tim Burke.
Cool. Yeah, I think so. And also, there's another guy I forget, but yeah, they ran shows up in that area, and then there was another wrestling school south of there, which was close to my house, about 25 minutes from my house. I ended up settling on that one. That was Dwayne Gill's wrestling school. He had commandeered the name or licensed the name from the Monster Factory in New Jersey. So he had the Monster Factory of Baltimore. And then I decided that would be the school for me. A guy named Dave DeMeglio, who was in a tag team called the Goodfellas. He teamed up with a guy named, Romeo Valentino. These guys are like fixtures of Maryland wrestling in the mid-'90s, just so you know. Yeah. I mean, so I might be giving you way too much history of indie wrestling, but anyway, so those guys were running this school. Haxel Rotten would be there training. Hack Myers would be there training. Ramblin' Rich Myers would be there training. So these guys, my class was Earl the Pearl. You know who he is? Earl the Pearl?
Yeah, I remember Earl the Pearl.
Yeah, Holy Rollers, right? Yeah, these guys are phenomenal wrestlers. So Earl the Pearl's in my class and a few other of these guys. But I trained with these guys, and they were a very good group of people to learn the professional wrestling business, or, you know, at least how to do the falls and how to do the moves pretty well. So I definitely enjoyed that portion of the wrestling school.
You got to take me back into the independent scene during the mid-'90s. When I came in, when
did you come in?
I came in around 2003. I trained under a guy, trained under Scott, Bill Bain, and another guy named Spasman Brian Anthony.
I remember all the three guys very well. I know Bill, I know Brian Anthony. I'm very still close with our buddy, and he's also he's also a
total diehard Dolphins fan.
Yeah, that's why I'm wearing all this, in case he decides to watch the show.
In case he decides to show up, huh?
Yeah, if he hits me with a chair from behind, I'll be ready. But regardless of that,
I came in around 2003.
But where was this school? I'm curious.
It was in Greencastle, Pennsylvania, so it was like right outside of Hagerstown, where like the Neil Superior School was. And like I remember I'd always hear stories about back in the day, like this, like the I-81 corridor was like kind of like Philadelphia, like where there was just a bunch of promotions. They all drew.
Plenty.
There's a lot of great talent that would come through there. Can you kind of, just take us back and talk to us about what the independent scene was? Like,
all right. So I started in '94 and summer of '94. So I remember the big TV feuds was probably, and this is just to give you an idea of what was going on in pro wrestling, if anyone's got to have a bigger view, and then we'll bring it back down to Maryland and Virginia and Pennsylvania and West Virginia. But I believe it was like maybe Owen was feuding with his brother Brett.
Wow.
They were doing the Heart Attack tour and during the house shows after WrestleMania. And they were doing Undertaker versus Undertaker when they had brought in
Brian Lee,
rest his soul, to play The Undertaker, and they did a feud together. So that was going on then. So that was those were the hot items going on the house show circuit, on the TV circuit. That was probably the big. So I came in then. And if you were a wrestling fan from as long as I've been, since the 70s, wrestling had boomed, gone back down, and it was kind of chugging away at that point. So 94 was not a high point for pro wrestling. WCW wasn't doing that great. ECW probably hadn't even really gotten going, but they had, they made some waves, but they weren't at the top. So my love for wrestling had nothing to do with whether or not I was going to walk into, Madison Square Garden and sell out an arena one day or anything. I just wanted to be a pro wrestler. So I came in during what I would call not a down period, but just not a high period of pro wrestling, as it became in 98, 99, 2000. It was just legitimately on fire. But the cool thing is the wrestling school that I trained at, they had a wrestling league called Maryland Championship Wrestling. I think before the new Maryland Championship Wrestling, which is kind of funny, but it was Maryland Championship Wrestling. Very small promotion, just ran with a couple big stars like Tom Brady, who also likes the Miami Dolphins, by the way. They'd bring in, Gilbert when he was just Dwayne Gill, and he might have been on TV doing some matches as a tag team. They brought in some names, but only for main events, and then to be a lot of the wrestling students. So that was me, 94. But what that allowed me to do was, once I booked on my first show, it allowed me to start working for other promotions, because then I was like, hey, I got a show under my belt. I'm a trained professional wrestler. I've only been doing it for 3 or 4 months. I wouldn't have put myself on these shows, to be honest with you. I would have told myself, if I was pro running, no way, dude, you're not anywhere near ready to be inside of an arena or inside of a wrestling ring. That'd be terrible. So
I feel like that's how we all start out, though. Like, we're not really ready, but it's like you kind of got to get in there with like the veterans that know what they're doing to kind of,
I think if I ever ran my own wrestling school, though, I'd have a little bit more of a stringency to who gets to be on a wrestling show in front of a paying crowd. Let's just put it that way. And I know that. So I'd say almost my era was when kind of that whole thing started, where maybe less trained guys were getting booked to do shows, but it's fine. So 3 months in, 4 months in, got a show. Then now we're going to talk about all that stuff that you were mentioning. So there was Mid East Wrestling Federation in Baltimore. There was also Neil's National Wrestling League. So I was lucky enough to have befriended Shane Shadows and Doug Deeds, and they'd let me come to their shows, and I usually didn't get to wrestle on those shows. I actually did the ring announcing on those shows. So I was bringing a suit and tie, and I was bringing my shiny shoes, and I was literally getting in the ring to do the ring announcing, because that's the spot they had for me. So
now let me ask you this: like, you're doing all this ring announcing early on in your career. Did you kind of benefit from being out there and getting to watch all the matches while you're ring announcing, and did that help you once you got to perform like regularly in the ring?
I would say, and I'd love to be like, oh, of course, but honestly, I don't know, because I was such a total wrestling nerd growing up. Like since the 1970s, I was watching it. I had videotapes. I was totally studying everything. It could, I was so not necessarily. I didn't do a lot. No, I don't want to make it seem like I did like 25 ring announcing shows. I did a few. But it was like my earliest starts with Neil Superior's Wrestling League, or his dad's wrestling league, National Wrestling League. It was just to get on the show any way I could. So I'm trying to point out that anything I could do to be on the show, if it meant put the ring up, it meant sweep, put the chairs up, I didn't care. So they said, dude, we can use a ring announcer. I said, all right, I'll take it. So just trying to say how you get in is any way you can. So anyway, what do I got to do, dude? Whatever. So they said, do you want to ring announce? I was like, sure.
I say this to a lot of the kids that are starting out today, because a lot of them, they feel like ring announcing or refereeing is like beneath them these days. And it's just like, I'm just like, I try to stress to like the kids now, it's just like, you have no idea how hard it used to be to get on these shows. You should take any opportunity that you get. Do you agree there? Like,
yeah, I agree, but what's even funnier I always like to bring things into all kinds of stages. So 1994, all I had to do was find 3 or 4 wrestling schools within an hour and a half of my house, and I was gonna be wrestling somewhere, right? So yeah. So imagine how it was for Hulk Hogan in 1975 or whatever it was to get in. You know what I'm saying? In other words, for me, you're right. So nowadays there's maybe 50 schools within like driving distance of anybody, right? And promotions all over the place. You know what I'm saying? So when I came in, I thought it was easy, because I kind of could understand how I'd talk to these other guys like, dude, nowadays, so it's easy now without a shadow of doubt. When I got in, it was still pretty easy compared to how you got in the 60s, or how you got in the 70s, or how you got in even in the 80s. How would you get in before there was a bunch of wrestling schools running around?
Before the internet, where you could find this information easily, it's at your fingertips now.
Yeah, right. So when I came in, I'm not saying it's easier than now. Now it's the easiest, and it'll always be easy from now on. It's just whatever. You can get it if you want to wrestle somewhere. Someone will probably whatever. You can come here and train for free, and we'll put you on our show because we'll just pay you nothing. And hey, everyone wins, right? I get some students, and I train you guys to put on shows, and my budget's low, and hopefully people show up, and you can bring your friends. So, but it was easy then. But my point is, it was easier now than then, but it was also easier then than when I had heard stories of most of the guys. You meet somebody that wasn't brought in by a family member or whatever. It was probably hard to get into pro wrestling, what I'm saying? Back in the, so I don't really get too hung up on how easy it is now, because it was pretty easy then. I really had a plethora of schools to choose from, and I just chose the one that was best. But you're right, it's compared to what it used to be, for sure.
Yeah, when I got in, this is a legit story about how I got in. Like, somebody called me. I'd been looking to train as a professional wrestler for it was about a year, and a friend of mine called me and said, "Hey, they're training wrestlers for $200 in Greencastle." And I'm just like, $200? I can't lose.
Right. So you got the train for $200?
Yeah, that's all I had to pay to train.
Not per workout, but like to get through the
just that was it. $200 for the class, and then you paid $20 a month just for
that's the best. Hey, that's pretty good. Yeah, that's a good deal.
It was a good deal.
I signed a contract for like $3,500, I think, to be a wrestling. At least $2,500. This is 1994, so, and I'm not quite 50, but I'm getting old, so I can't remember everything.
I was 20 years old. I could barely afford ramen, so I wouldn't.
Yeah, it was expensive for me. I was like, man, 25. And my parents, they paid for my college, but they weren't going to pay for my wrestling school. So at some point, they're like, yeah, we'll take you to the University of Maryland, but dude, all that's your weird nonsense that you got to deal with. So I said, all right. So I figured it out. But my point is, which was kind of funny, is so the school that I trained at before my $3,500 was fully paid. I probably paid a down payment and I paid monthly, and they had a whole deal. You paid like whatever it was, $50, $100 a month till you paid it off. They went out of business before I finished paying off the full amount. So I got a discounted pro wrestling training. So that worked out really well for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the guy who was running the school, he had some issues financially. So he squandered his money personally, which caused the school to not be able to pay the rent for the warehouse space they had.
That will happen.
So I was happy though. Honestly, I was so happy. I was like, dude, I saved like $1,000, and I was still wrestling on shows. So it worked out really well for me. But yeah, and I think you mentioned earlier, like talk about the scene. So there was National Wrestling League. There was Mid-East Wrestling Federation at that point. The Little League I worked for out of the school, Maryland Championship Wrestling, before the other Maryland Championship Wrestling came out. But we can get to them. And those were the main ones. And National Wrestling League would run in Hagerstown and Paw Paw, and they would do probably Martinsburg, and I feel like they would also do Kaiser, West Virginia. And they'd pick up some towns in Cumberland, maybe out there, and possibly in Pennsylvania and stuff. So that was a really fun wrestling organization to work for, and they always had like pretty big names on there. So when I first started, mid 1990s, 95, there was a handful of people to work for that you could get booked.
God, I remember the scene. I remember the scene was so much different back then. Like there were so many people that ended up going to make names for themselves. Like I know Carino would come down through here every while. You'd have the Hardy Boys come up through here. Christian York, Joey Matthews, Richard Romeo Valentino, Jimmy Cicero.
Right.
I was just telling you before we started this, my first independent show, and my co-host was at this show as well. But my first independent show and the first memory of that show was you. You were wrestling under the name Julio Sanchez, I believe.
I was Julio Hot Stuff Sanchez, to get it right.
Julio Hot Stuff Sanchez, and you were wrestling Jimmy Cicero, and it was at this old.
He was the wise guy.
Yes,
he still is, I'm sure.
And I remember you called him Jimmy the bald guy, Cicero, to get some heat on him or something. But that was my first memory of the first independent show that I ever went to.
Chris Tibbs. Winchester, Virginia. Does that sound right?
Yes, Winchester.
All right. Chris Tibbs was the promoter, and I do not remember his league, but it was like MECW, like Mid-East Championship Wrestling or something crazy. But I don't remember exactly what it was called. But I was hoping you'd remember what those call letters were. But it's no big deal if you don't.
No, like I wasn't into the independent scene as quite as much. Like I was at the time I was kind of like a casual wrestling fan. Like I would watch it with my dad when I was down there on the weekends,
right,
in Virginia. But yeah, when I was home,
What made you go to that show? Was the Iron Sheik on there or something like that? Was it like somebody crazy like him?
So what had happened? What made me go to that show was we had heard Vader was going to be on the show, and I'd heard about Vader.
Was it Big Slam Vader?
Yes, it was. It was Big Slam Vader in the main event.
That's crazy.
In a steel cage match.
Yeah, I remember. That's how I probably met him. Anyway, so and anyone who doesn't know, Big Slam Vader passed away in 2020. His name's Walt. Great guy though, and yes, that's how I met him, probably on that show, and he and I became friends. Actually, me and Slam would go to wrestling shows together because he was booked on shows I wasn't booked on, so he helped me get in touch with promoters, and we were doing shows in West Virginia, Pittsburgh, Ohio, and he had a whole plethora of guys that he worked for that I'd never even heard of before. So he got me great work. So I really like Slam a lot. And Cicero too. He helped me get in with this company called APWF, Allied Powers Wrestling Federation. And they were running shows out in the Punxsutawney area, which is a suburb of Altoona. So yeah. So if you've seen Groundhog's Day, you kind of know what Punxsutawney is all about. Until you've been there though, you don't really know Punxsutawney until you've been there. Yeah,
I've been to Altoona quite a few times, and I've got some stories.
So Altoona's a big city compared to Punxsutawney, just so you know. So,
yeah,
and Altoona wouldn't be considered a big city if you lived near Baltimore or DC, but it's definitely a big city in Punxsutawney. And So anyway, I Slam Vader was very instrumental in helping me get a lot more bookings, which helped me get a lot more experience. So
what was weird about that show? Like when I started, one of the first people I met was Switchblade, who was on that show.
Love Switchblade.
Yeah, the first match I had, the first actual professional wrestling match I had was in 2004, January 31st, 2004. And I think it was in Ridgely, West Virginia. Switchblade was on that show, and then there was two other guys from that original independent show that I went to that were on that show.
Right, cool.
Yeah.
Who ran that show? Who ran Ridgely, West Virginia?
That was the Mighty Biggs and Spazman Anthony.
Nice. Okay, cool. Yep. I
And
remember the name.
that was the first for their promotion, 5-Star Wrestling. That's was the first show that I ever worked.
Very cool. That's awesome. Yeah, and yeah, Nate is he's cool. That's a good dude.
Now I know we were talking about Atlantic Terrace Championship Wrestling, which was a fixture in the area.
Yeah, I'd say Martinsburg, right?
Yeah, they have another guy that actually is using that name and running again. So like just to give everybody a little insight, like the original Atlantic Terror Championship Wrestling, like who do you remember from that organization?
Oh, dude, they were great, man. For an indie wrestling league in West Virginia, they were a fan. He would bring in guys from MCW and NWL. So you'd see guys like obviously Doug Delicious and obviously Joey Matthews, Christian York, who were very, very good, talented, independent wrestlers. Yeah, and then I think he would bring in guys from obviously Jimmy Cicero would be on the shows. I want to say Corporal Punishment would be on the shows from Maryland Championship Wrestling. And if anyone doesn't know, Maryland Championship Wrestling was a I wouldn't call it an offshoot, but a direct competition to Mid-East Wrestling Federation in Baltimore. Yeah. The guys didn't like how that league was being run, so they started their own wrestling league, and they started their own wrestling school called Bone Breakers. So, but Atlanta Championship Wrestling had a lot of good wrestlers. I just remember having good matches. They were having a lot of fun there. They ran in Martinsburg, and I remember Mike Branson was the promoter. And if anyone watched those shows, they were a lot of fun. I'm sure that there's a way to see them on the internet or something like that. But yeah, it's a lot of good times were had there.
All right, so like we're talking about 94, and I'm guessing like early 95 here.
Atlanta Terror would probably be 97-ish, probably
97-ish. Oh wow,
97, 98, something like that. Yeah,
you were probably doing like TV matches around then as well.
Yeah, I think my first TV matches and again, wouldn't recommend it, but Hollywood Bob Starr from Mid-East Wrestling Federation, MUF is what they called it. Yes, Hollywood Bob Starr. He was asked to bring in local talent from the Baltimore area. I had started training in 94, the summer of 94. I think before the summer of 95, so let's just call it spring, he had asked me to go do TV tapings for WCW. And I didn't belong anywhere near the ring, just so you know. I shouldn't have ever been anywhere near WCW or any type of televised professional wrestling. I will admit that right now.
I'm going to put you on the spot here. June 6, 1995, the first record I have of you here on WCW television is you facing Ming with Colonel Parker at ringside.
Correct. And I remember pretty well knowing that I was shaking in my little boots.
Oh, I'm sure.
National TV, not even a year in the business. Maybe if you had to say, how many matches did you have by then? Maybe if I was lucky, 50, maybe. And there's good and bad news to that. Good news is I didn't have to do any offense. So in other words, I didn't have to worry about doing anything really bad. But the bad news is Ming probably weighed 270 and I weighed about 175. So him not even trying to hurt me was extremely challenging because he could break me in half, to be totally honest with you. So, but yeah, I remember a few things. His chops were extremely painful. My hair was extremely big. I mean, my hair was like out to here. It was crazy, Samoan hair. And I was really thin, and I had a black singlet I bought at like the Sports Authority. Like I was so cheap. I mean, like I looked awful. And I had hair on my chest. I didn't know anything about hair in my armpits, thin as a rail, like just the worst looking human ever. And they're like, "Hey, go fight Ming." I'm like, "Whatever, you guys are crazy. Even have me on this show." So, and he destroyed me in like 3 minutes. You know, there was more time of him, you know, either walking to the ring and Colonel Parker, you know, waving his little handkerchief and, you know, whatever he does after a match and laughing than it was of our actual match. But I do remember, and it was a super kick was the finish. And it was I can't even remember all that, but I do remember just how awful I looked on television at that moment in my life. So I wasn't prepared.
Yeah. Facing Ming that night. And then it looks like the next night they had you in the ring against Johnny B. Bad.
Your memory's better than mine unless you're reading something from the internet.
This is history of WWE.com. You got to check the site out. It's got like ring results the whole way back to like the 60s.
Yeah, that's pretty insane. So yes, I wrestled Johnny B. Bad. And the only thing I remember about that is, and I think both these matches were probably filmed at Center Stage, which is Atlanta, Georgia. They would film WCW Saturday Night there, and they maybe even filmed NWA Pro. And I'm not 100% sure. I don't think it was.
You were absolutely right here. You were absolutely
Center Stage a while ago. But what I remember about Johnny B. Bad's match is, I think, again, not a lot of offense for me. So that was good because I wasn't prepared for doing anything special. I mean, yeah, on the indie shows, I may have had 50 matches. I may have thrown decent punches and kicks and may have executed wrestling moves, but I don't think I actually knew the ins and outs of properly wrestling professionally. One day I'll get to that a little bit later on how I learned more. But what was cool is I got to be on TV. And then the one thing I do remember is he gave me a Hurricane Rana. And when I tell you I'm not a properly trained pro wrestler, I don't care what anybody says. I started in 94 in the summer and I was doing my shows by the fall of 94 and wrestling through the winter of 94, 95 and the spring of 95. But by the time I got to this place, these TV tapings, I shouldn't have been there. And I'll admit it right now. And Bob Starr shouldn't have brought me down. And WCW probably shouldn't have said, dude, go out there and do these. I had to take a Hurricane Runner from the top rope, not knowing anything about the move. So imagine, if you watch it today, there's always people standing around with their arms like this. And they're just, doing that stupid thing they call like the alligator. Oh, I'm waiting to get the move. I didn't even know I had to do that. So imagine me, I'm so dumb. It looks real as hell because I literally just standing there and he jumps up, wraps his legs around my neck, and he does a backflip. He literally drives me DDT from the top rope right into the mat and just spikes my ass. And I don't know any better. He covers 1, 2, 3. When I get to the back, what they would call the gorilla, not that they had one at WCW, but whenever, everybody there, all the agents were like, oh my God, are you okay? And luckily I was like, yeah, man, I'm fine. They're like, oh my God, we thought he killed you. So again, didn't belong anywhere near.
They're probably like, this kid can sell. Like,
well, they did. Believe me, I got booked forever after that. So that was the beginning. So as horrible as I was, it's true. They were like, hey, bring that kid back. I'm like, what the hell, man? So Bob would, anytime he had a TV taping, Julio Dinero was going to either Atlanta, Georgia, or Orlando when they started doing the WCW pros and the worldwides from Orlando, or they do the Saturday nights from Georgia. And sometimes what we do is a Saturday night in the center stage, and then they'd film their pros or their worldwides from a neighboring town, Dalton, Georgia, Dothan, Alabama, Augusta, Georgia, and they just go to some random arena where house shows used to be staged, and they would just stage tons of TV matches. So I got matches with like Brad Armstrong, and then gradually I got better. So I didn't stay the worst wrestler ever. Right. No, but even so, just gradually. And what I did that was kind of crazy that Bob Starr wouldn't do for some reason, and it's no offense to him. When I was in Atlanta, I would go to the power plant, and I would go there and be like, let me go to this place, because we would do our show. We would only be 2 hours from the next town. So I'd go there in the morning from like 10 to like 2. And then at 2, I'd leave and go to the town we had to be in for the TV taping. And that helped a lot because they actually would watch me wrestle and they were like, dude, what are you doing? And it wasn't that my moves were executed poorly, but when we'd get in the ring and just do wrestling moves, they were like, why would you do that? And I was like, I don't know. And they're like, why would you do that? And I was like, I don't know. And they're like, what do you mean you don't know? I'm like, whatever, dude. I'm kicking a guy. I'm throwing a forearm shiver. And yeah, but they explained to me that this is not just random wrestling move execution. And I picked up a lot from the power plant. So that was kind of where my brain flipped from wrestling move execution to kind of like a logical storytelling, matchmaking, kind of whatever real pro wrestling is supposed to be. I picked it up from the power plant. No offense to my wrestling school. They might have taught me things, how to wrestle, and they may have explained it in a way that I didn't get it. So maybe it was my fault. I'd get some crazy analogies of what a match is, and I can't even, they're not even R-rated. They're like X-rated, how, basically how the match is supposed to go. Yeah. And the end of the match is like this. I'm like, okay, I can't even tell my kids what the end of the match is supposed to be like. But it was just, basically an explosion of some sorts, right? So anyway, so I don't want to get too deep into that nonsense. But so I didn't get the analogy, unfortunately. But at the power plant, the analogy was put into a better way of, and there's guys like Mike Winter there. Have you ever heard of Crystal Pez Watley?
The name sounds familiar.
Big star in the mid 1980s for Mid-Atlantic Wrestling, and I'm sure oh my God, what's the dude who used to coach over there? He had like a military background, a buzz cut.
What is it? Pittman? Craig Pittman?
Yeah, dude, Craig Pittman. So these guys were there, and they literally took everything you did in the ring seriously. There were like 6 rings. It's cool, but when you get in the ring, they would shut you down. Like, in other words, they weren't just going to watch me do a bunch of wrestling moves with somebody else. They would say, "Stop! Why'd you do that?" And I was like, So they taught me, like, there's a beginning, middle, and end. There's a heat spot. There's a comeback here and there, and it's all got to make sense. If the guy beat the crap out of your leg in the second minute of the match, you should not be then jumping up, doing 2 leapfrogs, 3 arm drags, jumping off the top rope with that hurt leg. So it kind of figured out, okay. So anyways, that's where a lot of the psychology / logical knowledge of what a wrestling match and what wrestling is came to be more crystal clear in my head. So it was a good experience.
Yeah, and for the kids today that don't know like how strenuous the power plant was, like I remember guys that would be playing professional football. You'd always hear the stories about like former NFL players coming in and Craig Pittman just beating them into oblivion with drills. Like that was that place would make a man out of
do
the
more
smallest
squats
sport.
than they'd ever been able to do. People would be throwing up in buckets and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a quick story about that thing. I'm going to use the word circumvent that whole craziness, because since I was booked on TV tapings, I was already considered a wrestler, and I was not a wrestler. But since I was booked, I got to bypass that whole 4,000 squats because they needed me to wrestle that night. So the hell, they're not going to beat my legs to shit like during the morning, right? So I got to luckily go to the ring where the wrestlers worked, not where the trainees were. And I sucked. I should have been with the trainees, but they were just beating them up physically. They weren't even training them to wrestle yet. So they were just like making sure they knew who was tough enough to like survive the whole physical aspect of it, who's got the guts and heart. So I luckily leapfrogged over that whole nonsense and got to just learn how to wrestle properly. And then I'd even send those guys tapes of my indie matches and they would obliterate them. It's like, dude, you're a heel, you're doing a moonsault. Why? And I'm like, oh. So they really brought the whole you're going to try to make the crowd like you? Nowadays, that would be, you can't even tell people that, you know what I'm saying? But back then, in the mid 90s, bad guys doing pretty moves was not cool.
No.
And it was not cool. Why would you do a moonsault? They're going to think you're good. I'm like, yeah, well, no, you don't want them to think you're good. You want them to think you're terrible and they should hate you. Not that you're a terrible wrestler, but they shouldn't like you. If you do a high spot, you're going to make the fans actually like you more. So you want to get the opposite effect. So a lot of learning going on, but nowadays I feel like that's dead. So nowadays, like, who can do the prettier move all day long? And, even if you're the bad guy, you're still on TV to do the pretty move. It's almost like, so you think you can dance as opposed to simulated combat, So
pretty much you're not wrong. So Bob Starr's getting you into WCW. You're learning a lot. You're taking part in the power plant. You're getting to do these center stage TV tapings.
Right.
Eventually we're going to see you on WWF television as well.
Yeah, I got booked through. Dude, that's a good question. That might have been a Tom Brandy booking. That went to State College, 1996. I want to say September-ish. And the big feud then, I feel like, was Mankind versus, could have been The Undertaker or
you got
somebody.
A good memory here.
Yeah, I'm a fan. I mean, I hate to say it, I'm a wrestling fan.
No, you got a really good memory. State College, Pennsylvania, September 24th, 1996. We got a crowd of about 3,100 here. You are getting pinned by Hunter Hearst Helmsley with a pedigree.
Right, but
whatever happened to that guy? Whatever happened?
Yeah. So that's so funny, right? Yeah, whatever happened. First, poor guy in 1996, he's wrestling Julio Sanchez, and then a few years later, he's owning the company, right? So yeah. And my trajectory went in a whole different direction. That so that's kind of funny. But so I wrestled him. But what's cool about that, which people don't, unless you go find it, I'm sure it's on somewhere on the network if anyone can find those weird obscure TV tapings. But I wrestled him, and no fanfare for me. Maybe I got like my name on the screen and I got to flex a little bit and look like I had a chance, but the reality was I didn't. But what was cool is Mr. Perfect and him were feuding for whatever reason, right? And Perfect was doing the announcing. So back then it was probably him and, I don't know, let's say probably Vince McMahon. They were calling the matches. Perfect went, and at that time, Hunter Hearst Helmsley used to bring a model to the ring. They always have him with a model, right? So,
yes.
And it would be just a random girl. It would never be like the same girl 2 weeks in a row. But Mr. Perfect went down to the ringside area and started flirting with his model during our match. So he's obliterating me in the ring. What's hilarious is when he starts taking the girl's attention, that Hunter leaves me. I think he might even have me set up for the pedigree. And instead of winning, he throws me to the ground. He walks outside the ring. He starts, like kind of jawing back and forth with Mr. Perfect. I was able to jump outside the ring at this point. And this is a big deal for me because I'd never really had a lot of good TV time. So I spun him around, hit him in the face like 3 times on the floor. I might have slammed his head into the mat, rolled him into the ring, went to the top rope, came off with a flying crossbody, and he got the 1, 2, and the 2.5 kick out. And so that was a big deal for me because I was like, never even had a chance to do anything cool on TV before. So that usually it was just like, you're getting squashed. All right. So, and then at the end, he probably kicked me in the midsection, pummeled me in the corner, and they gave me the pedigree and won the match. And then probably went back over to Mr. Perfect, and that was the end of that. But it was a lot of fun, and I remember that match pretty well, just because it was my first offensive attack that had any meaning or even got a close to a pinfall on national TV. So that was cool for me. And that was like, September of 96. I still didn't belong around those guys, honestly, though. I mean, it was simple enough. I pulled it off. I always executed the moves well. I just don't think I was ready for, like be on the road with us and be a star. I was still learning my craft, so to speak, So.
Yeah, and so I've got another ring result here from 1997. We're going to jump ahead a year here with WWF, but I've got you facing off against Vader, beating you with a moonsault. So what was it like to take a moonsault from a 400-pound man?
Well, Vader was interesting. First of all, the stories with Vader is this. So before you even wrestle Vader, Bob Starr goes up to you and goes, "Listen, dude, Vader punches the nobodies in the mouth really hard if you don't sell for him. So imagine he's 400 pounds easy.
Yeah.
He doesn't know me. He's not friendly. He's not like a nice guy. He's not meeting me in the locker room and shaking my hand and being cool. He's just doing his thing. He's kind of like an angry old man. Maybe he's not old, but at that time, I just some fat old angry dude who looks evil, and he always, so whatever. So Bob goes, "Look, dude, if you don't sell for him right, he's going to punch you in the lips and he's going to bust your mouth." And I was like, "All right, dude, I'll sell for him. So, so every time he hit me in the ribs, I would almost jump in the midair and make it look like the punches were like lifting me out of my boots. And I gave him, I gave him the greatest. He looked, not that he wouldn't look good beating me up anyways, but I made him look like $1 billion. And so he also did a move that I remember where the razor's edge, where he picks you up by your armpits? Okay, but his was he spins around and throws you in midair like a propeller. So you're literally doing this, and then you hit the mat really hard. So that was one of his big moves, and he did that. And then the moonsault, I hate to lie to you. I mean, I hate to tell you this. I don't think I remember the moonsault. He might have done the Vader bomb, but I don't think it's a moonsault. I think it was more like comes out of the second corner and drops a splash on you. I don't think he did a legit moonsault. So whoever wrote that may be wrong. I think I remember a man of his size flipping backwards off the top rope to land on me.
Yeah.
But he.
Well, yeah. Granted, the results site I'm getting this from.
No, I agree. I just don't think that was it. Yeah, I think I'd have a very keen memory. But what I remember about him is he booked me. He asked to wrestle me on another show. So WCW had like their 3 shows: their Worldwide, their Pro, and their Saturday Night. He asked for me to wrestle him again later on another TV taping on a different show, and they granted that to him. And then when he went to WWF, and I did TV tapings, he and I wrestled each other again. So I wrestled Vader 3 times, which and I survived all of them, and he could have easily obliterated me all 3 times. So anyway, so that's what I remember about him. And I remember going back to WCW because I was doing TV tapings for both leagues at that time, and I remember seeing Kevin Nash. He's like, "Why are you working for the competition?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I saw you against Vader yesterday on TV." And I'm like, whatever, dude. And I was like, don't get me in trouble. Like, I didn't know anyone cared. And I don't think he cared. I think he knew I was just earning a living, but he tried to make me feel bad. Like, "What are you working for those guys for?" And I'm like, I'm just getting paid to wrestle. What do you want me to do?
Yeah,
but it was funny that he mentioned that and like tried to make it seem like he was almost like playing around, but he knew that I didn't know yet, or I wasn't sure. I was like,
he's trying to test you. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm still nobody. So he's just like, "Hey, you shouldn't be doing 2 federations at once, bro." But he was just messing around, I'm sure.
So now with WCW in '97, I've got you here. You wrestling Scotty Riggs, La Parka. Who else we got here?
Dude, everybody by then. '97 was big.
Alex Wright.
Yeah, that was maybe '95. That was still '95, honestly. Alex Wright. I did that while we were still doing the TV tapings way early in my career.
Really?
Back in the Ming days and the Johnny B. Bad days. That's '95-ish. But I also wrestled Eddie Guerrero a couple times during that period, and I also wrestled Dean Malenko.
Yeah, I've got the Eddie Guerrero match here in Orlando at Universal Studios, October 9th, 1997.
Yeah, I might have worked them one other time. Those were good matches, though. Then, what's crazy is by that time, the '97s, they started making all their matches competitive. So there was no more you go in the ring and just look like a loser. Like, in other words, that whole era of squashing humans to make the star look like somebody had gone to the wayside. And now every match had to have an offense and a defense for both guys. So by that time, I was trained well. I had been wrestling a few hundred matches at least by then, and I was ready to wrestle Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, Scotty Riggs. I did wrestle Scotty Riggs on a house show in Baltimore, believe it or not. They had a house show run where I think, what's that guy's name? Who was his partner in American Males?
Buff Bagwell.
Buff Bagwell missed a house show run. So I was at Baltimore just hanging out on a random Friday night, and they're like, dude, you're going to wrestle Scotty Riggs tonight. You bring your gear? I'm like, yeah, dude. So I wasn't ready for that. Then he said, we're going to need you to go to Pennsylvania, and you need to go to West Virginia. We're doing a 3-day loop. Can you be at all 3? And I wrestled La Parca, I think, on one of those, and I wrestled him, and I might have wrestled somebody else on the 3rd loop. And then they flew me back home. And that was like, to me, that was a huge deal because I was still like just a TV guy. So to get on house shows for 3 nights and wrestle in Baltimore, which is like pretty much my home arena.
Yeah.
And I got to jump off the top rope with a drop kick and whatever, get some pins and look like I could have actually won. And I remember the referee was like, dude, you can't just go to the top rope and throw a drop kick without letting us know, because apparently Scotty Riggs didn't know what I was doing. So I just dropped. I was still that new. Well, I'm like, drop the guy with a suit, whatever. It could have been a body slam or whatever. And then I just started climbing to the top rope. The poor guy's like, what's he going to do up there? And it could have been a Pilates press. It could have been, I just do a drop kick off the top. I still wasn't quite ready at that point because I was just, and I remember the referee's like, you can't just do crap. What if we don't, and I was like, all right, man, I'm sorry. And then, I still got booked for the next 2 days and they still flew me home. But you learn a lot as you're doing this stuff.
Yeah. You were
make
kind of learning on
mistakes
the
all
job.
over the place. But I was still happy to go to the top rope and throw a drop kick in the Baltimore arena. So I was more, happy that I'm actually getting some shit done in the wrestling ring than just, getting kicked in the stomach and getting beat up all the time. So it's cool.
Yeah. And throwing a drop kick in your home arena.
Yeah, sorry about the language. You're going to have to bleep all that out. I'm sorry, man.
No, we cuss like sailors on here.
All right, fair.
Yeah. And it's few and far between, but we let an F-bomb or 2 drop every once in a while. So
it's ruining everything for everybody.
So I'm going back to WWF here, 1998. I've got you in the Nassau Coliseum. This is right after WrestleMania 14. So right after WrestleMania 14 and right before the business.
What year would that be? 1998?
1998. Nassau
Yeah, that's
Coliseum.
right when everything was hot.
It was I think it was about
97 was getting there, but 98 was pretty hot. It was maybe 99 was the hottest or whatever, or 2000, but 98 was pretty crazy at that point. Wrestling was off the charts.
Yeah, so this during the dark matches of this show, we get Darren Drozdov in the dark match. We've got Val Venus facing Sean Stasiak in the dark match, but this one sticks out here for me. It's you versus a young up-and-coming wrestler by the name of Adam Copeland. I wonder what he did with his life.
Wow, Adam Copeland was so cool. The funny thing about Adam Copeland is he used to wrestle with Christian. They would come down from Toronto and wrestle with me. For a league that Shane Shadows got me hooked up with back in the mid-90s. It was called Pennsylvania Championship Wrestling out of Reading, Pennsylvania.
I remember Pennsylvania Championship. Yeah.
Okay, they were phenomenal for us. In other words, the guy was smart. He'd bring in me and Simon Diamond. He'd bring in guys like Reckless Youth, if you remember who he was.
I remember Reckless.
Really, dude, top-notch indie worker. He taught me more about wrestling matches than anybody else. I can honestly say if I ever see that guy again, I'll thank him forever. So he was the Christopher Daniels of the East Coast. Chris Daniels was the superstar of Chicago indie wrestling, right? He was the guy, and he's still around. He's great. So, Reckless Youth was the guy that everybody wanted to wrestle because he knew every move. He could work. He was entertaining. He wasn't just a guy that did moves. He knew how to do stuff. So Pennsylvania Championship Wrestling had Reckless Youth, Ace Darling, if you remember him. Obviously Simon Diamond, who made it. He was probably Lance Diamond back then. Yeah, they had a lot of good wrestlers, but they bring in these 2 guys, Edge and Christian, from Toronto, and this was pretty early. Might have been.
What was Edge's? Do you remember Edge's indie name? I think it was
Sexton Hardcastle. Yeah. He was, and Christian Cage might have been his wrestling name. I'm not even 100% sure if that was his wrestling name as an indie guy, but I think it was. I know him as Jay Rez.
I want to say it was his indie name.
Yeah, so it was cool. So they would come down and we wrestle each other. But and honestly, you're gonna hate me, and this is how many matches I've had. I probably had 1,000 matches. I do not remember wrestling Adam Copeland. As much as I remember all those other matches you mentioned, I'm not lying to you, dude. I don't remember wrestling Adam Copeland at the Nassau Coliseum. And what's funny is I live 10 minutes from Nassau Coliseum today. I live in Long Island. I literally have sent my kids to go see wrestling. I get tickets from some of my friends who still wrestle for WWF, and they'd go to that show and they'd be home in 15 minutes after they left the building. So I live really close there, but I don't remember wrestling him there, which is great. So I'd love to tell you this story about our match. I could just tell you how I met him, which is Pennsylvania Championship Wrestling. But I remember working with Christian a lot over there. I remember doing a moonsault and I broke his nose. So Christian, every time I'd see him at WWE, he would always like make his nose funny and be like, "Oh yeah, that's the guy that broke my nose." And he was cool about it. He wasn't evil. He didn't like, tell everybody don't wrestle him. He sucks. But he always brought up that I broke his nose on an indie show in Pennsylvania. So we always had that in common. But yeah, I don't remember the match with the Edge at all. So I don't have anything I can tell you. But I'm sure we had a good match. I just can't tell you about it.
So this one here, I actually remember this match because this happened in Baltimore on a Shotgun Saturday Night taping. They've got you wrestling Bob Holly and Bart Gunn, your tag team partner with Steve Carino. Do you remember anything?
Yeah, I do, dude. I really do remember. I remember a reason for a few reasons. One, I believe there was a massive snowstorm that weekend or that week. So they had to literally film this could be a different show, but I remember in Baltimore, they had to literally cancel the show due to the massive snowstorm. We had to spend the night. And then the next day we did the TV taping. So it might've been a Tuesday night and they said, dude, you got to stay overnight. And we're going to do it on Wednesday, whatever the case is. And that was one of the shows in Baltimore. I remember having that problem. But yes, I remember the match with Steve Carino. I remember that Jim Cornette was managing them.
Yes.
And I remember we did a double Hurricane Rana. And so we both went up and flipped those guys over in double Hurricane Ranas. And then I don't remember how everything else, but it was a super competitive match. I just remember they gave us like a ton of offense. And I remember that there was some heat, not with us and not with the workers, but I think the office wanted them to look stronger. But the wrestlers were so cool, they gave us and Jim Cornette liked me and Steve Carino. Like he literally got us booked for TVs. Like, so Tom Brandy brought me in to get the first TV taping done when I wrestled Hunter Hearst Helmsley. But at some point it would be Cornette calling. Hey, can you do this? Can you do this? So we would do TV tapings all over. It'd be Philly, it'd be, Cleveland, Boston, wherever we could get to. As long as I could drive there, South Carolina, it didn't matter. If I could drive there, they'd book us. But I remember that match really well. We had a lot of offense, and it was a lot of fun. So I remember that match a lot. It was like a big deal for us. That was one of my first, fun TV taping matches. Again, at that point, all the matches were competitive. There was no more just get in there and get crushed. It was all, you can get in your offense and show us what you know and all that stuff. So it was cool. It was a good time.
Yeah, it looks like after this in 1998, they kind of had you and Steve kind of married together when you came up there to do dark matches or TV matches. Looks like we got you facing Steve Carino at the Continental Airlines Arena over in the Meadowlands.
I remember that.
You and Steve facing off against Sho Funaki and Men's Teo.
Very, very slight memory of that one. Very slight.
We've got you facing a guy named Armando Fernandez, and looks like he pinned you with a spinning pile driver.
Armando Fernandez. Yeah, you know what? You're actually reading some of those shows. Now, this was funny. They had a show made for the Spanish audience on Lucha Vision or whatever, right? I'm making
Super Astros. I remember
Super Astros. And I would get booked for that all the time, which was great because I was Julio Sanchez or Dinero or Fantastico. I probably just Fantastico might have been the name then. But yeah, and that was great because they were like, we need somebody who can appeal to the audience. And I never got to do get interviews that much. I don't remember anything like that, but I got to wrestle Val Venus because he spoke Spanish. So they gave him a shot on the show. We had a really fun match. I got to wrestle Armando Fernandez, which I remember they were so cool. I got to do the superplex off the top rope, but I did it where you hook him under your armpit and it's almost like a reverse suplex. So I was doing that off the top rope and maybe it was off the second. I might've been on the second. He might've been sitting on the top, but yeah. So they gave us really competitive matches where we got to do all our crazy moves. And I think Lita, was managing do you remember a guy named Aguilera or something like that? Do you remember a guy that she would have managed, a Spanish wrestler?
I know who you're talking about. He ended up becoming SRE.
Aguilar. His name was Aguilar.
Aguilar. Yeah.
Yes. So we wrestled each other on their TV shows too. So that was for me, that was a lot of fun because they were like, we need you for the Spanish TV show. And it's like a half an hour show.
He wrestled under the name Papi Chulo as well, I believe.
Perfect. And I might have wrestled him as Papi Chulo, but you're right. Good memory on your part because I can't remember all that stuff, but you did really well. I remembered Aguilar though. That's pretty good. So
yeah, I remember.
Yeah, so that was fun.
I remember Aguila. He had that match at WrestleMania 14 with Taka Michinoku. I want to say it was right after the Battle Royal. Kind of open up to the audience. Yeah, my memories really that I remember that very well.
That stuff. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I'm sure they would have a great match because those two guys were very talented. They were like what happens now in every match. That's what they were doing back then. Like WWE only had a couple of guys that would do 5,000 moves per match. You know what I'm saying? The guys that would just whatever nowadays is normal. Back then, that was special to see their light heavyweights doing everything. You know, nowadays everybody's doing everything, but back then that was still kind of special. You know, it was an interesting thing.
All right. Now, we got you over at WCW here. You get to perform in Salisbury in late April. And this is like that same month you did the Adam Copeland match. But this is slightly different because you're wrestling Bobby Eaton. Now, I'll admit this. I'm not that big of a fan of like the Southern, like the 80s Southern wrestling.
Oh, however, and I really am.
However, I'm a big fan of Bobby Eaton.
Cool. I love 80s Southern wrestling, dude.
I'm a big fan of Bobby Eaton, and I got to ask, like, how was it to wrestle that guy?
Don't hate
especially
me. All right, don't hate me.
All right.
It's going to be one of those Adam Copeland moments again.
Oh,
I'm the worst guest ever. I know. I barely remember wrestling him. And you know, it could have just gone so well that I don't remember. God, man. And I know Bobby Eaton's the best. I don't even have like a really clear memory of him doing his leg drop off the top rope, which I'm sure was the finish of the match. But yeah, man. And also in Salisbury, I do remember, which is weird. You're going to be like, you remember this, but not that. And that's whatever. My memory only works subjectively, I guess. But I remember wrestling in Salisbury when they were doing the NWO matches. Remember they had the NWO Saturday night? It was like this.
Yes.
So they did an offshoot. I remember wrestling guys like, it was weird. I feel like they put Big Show in a mask, or it was somebody, it was dark TV taping. There was no fans there yet. So I could have worked Bobby Eaton that night in front of people and worked the NWO that day, like in the afternoon. But I remember wrestling with, it could have been 1, 2, 3 Kid or Sean Waltman. And I remember it might have been Razor Ramon, which was Scott Hall. And I feel like there was another guy. It was like a 6-man tag match. But I remember those guys were in there, and one of them was wearing a mask. I can't remember why. Maybe at the time they did a gimmick where they were masked for some reason. I don't even know. But I remember wrestling those guys at Salisbury, which is kind of goofy that I remember that. But I don't remember the Bobby Eaton.
Well, tell me you remember this one. This was July 7th, 1998. It was in Macon, Georgia. This was the night after the Monday Nitro that Goldberg won the World Heavyweight Championship. So,
okay.
Yeah, that is in Macon, Georgia. You're wrestling Steve Mongo McMichael. Tell me you remember this one.
I do remember wrestling Mongo, but I can't give you like spot for spot. I just remember I had to wrestle him, and I remember he wasn't super trained. Like he wasn't like the.
You don't say.
Yeah. I mean, no, but honestly,
I don't know if
he wasn't super trained. In other words, he was reminding me a little bit of me when I shouldn't have been on TV, but he was big and strong.
He was a horseman. Can you believe?
Yeah, no, I'm not, dude. Whatever, dude. He had a lot of personality. You're right. I mean, horsemen should be really well trained wrestlers. But you know, he did the football tackle for the finish. I don't remember. You know, all threes and like shoulder tackle me in the leg, and I flip, and then he covers. I don't remember anything about. Go ahead.
There's a cult following on the internet right now. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but there's a cult following on the internet of Mongo botches. Did you have any of this?
You know what? It doesn't, dude. It really doesn't ring a bell at all. I hate to say it. I wish I could be like, yes, this was phenomenal. He, did this move that no one's ever seen, and I dropped myself on my shoulder blades. But no, I don't remember anything crazy about that match at all. It really rings no bell, honestly. I've done a lot of matches. I have like 1,000 matches, so it's hard for me to remember everybody.
Well, yeah, no, I can understand that.
Yeah, but I feel bad because like, hey, what about this one? Oh, no.
They have you also on this show wrestling Scott Putski.
That was on TV, and you can find that on YouTube, and it's actually a really fun match, and I got a lot of offense in there. And I remember Chris Jericho saying that, it was Johnny Swinger saying you got to slow down a little bit, because I remember I threw like maybe 3 quick elbows onto his forehead, and they said, yeah, and then this is a guy my age telling him, slow down, kid. He just said you got to slow down. You hit 3 elbows so fast that you didn't even give him a chance to register them. You were just dropping. I just threw 3 elbows quick. I was still kind of getting my feet wet. I was better, but I was still, not perfect. So I learned, and those are things I remember the most. But a Scott Putski match was pretty fun. He might hit me with a Polish hammer, and I remember we had a pretty competitive match. It was good. It was good for TV. Good for me. So
awesome. Now I know, like, we get into 1999 here. I think this is like where stuff kind of starts taking off for you a little bit. And I'm trying to find the show here. If you just give me 1 second here.
Just mention which show you're trying to find.
I believe this may have been. It was a memorial show. It may have been the Mark Curtis Memorial Show.
Oh yeah. I did that in Pittsburgh.
Yes, the Ross Draper Ice Gardens.
Yeah, it was a really fun show. I'm trying to think who I wrestled though. Had a good match. Remember having a really good match, and it was like that was a really fun show. I remember, and it was a crazy show because then you saw like Chris Jericho and you'd see some WWF guys mixed with some WCW guys on that show. Like there was maybe Cornette was there, and maybe some of these guys from Smoky Mountain history who'd be on 2 separate organizations that were competing. They were on that show. I think Shane Douglas was on that show. I remember Chris Jericho was on that show, and I remember having a lot of fun. If you tell me who I wrestled, I might remember more. But I remember the match was fun, and it was a good match. I just don't remember who I wrestled because I'm terrible.
I am looking for the show.
Don't drive yourself up the wall doing it. But yes, I do remember the show. It was a big deal. For me, it was. Anyways, it's good.
Yeah, I'm looking for the show. Yeah, Curtis comes home. You were wrestling Frank the Tank Parker.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Frank's good. Yeah, he was a big star I'd say Frank the Tank Parker, if I'm not mistaken, was more of a Mid-Atlantic indie wrestler from a tag team. I feel like he teamed up with another guy with the last name Anderson, and they did like an Anderson's gimmick. Like they did like they were kind of like that. If I'm not mistaken, that's who I wrestled, and it was a lot of fun. I remember Frank the Tank Parker, North Carolina indie guy.
So from what I'm seeing here, just with Wikipedia and the history of WWE here, this is what got you noticed by ECW, if I'm not mistaken.
Good question. No, I think what happened with ECW is there's a possibility. But I'm under the impression that it was more like I had friends that had gone there that I knew, like Johnny Swinger, who had wrestled in WCW and spent time with, and Lance Diamond, who'd become Simon Diamond, and Steve Corino. And these kind of guys were already there. And I kind of bugged them. I said, dude, I want to kind of work for you guys. So they were nice enough to get me booked for a show in Washington, D.C., where I wrestled
Nation's
Grimes.
That was at Nation's Nightclub. It was
Nation's Nightclub.
Yeah, it was the only show.
Yep, I remember having fun there. I wrestled Grimes, I want to say. And then we went down to, I want to say Roanoke, Virginia, or Virginia Beach, and did a show the day later, and I wrestled against somebody else. I forget who it was. But that helped me get the open door to ECW. They said, dude, if you want to come here and work full-time, we'll bring you in. And then I kind of worked it out where Joey and Christian could travel with me because they liked them as well, and we lived near each other, Joey Matthews and Christian York. So we worked it out where our schedules finally meshed in like the summer of, I guess, 99. We finally ran out all our indie dates and just started, working for them full time, which was pretty cool. It was just a good time.
So take me this is like 2000, 2001. This is like the end of the company. Like it was the last year of it.
Yeah, maybe we went there in 2000. Maybe I did the matches in late 99, but we didn't start there till the summer of 2000. That's probably when we finally had enough free time to we could all had our schedules opened up and cleared up, and we can go work for ECW. Right.
Yeah. So yeah, I want to say this because I got this Nation's Nightclub show here.
Yep.
February.
What's that date?
You and Vic Grimes, and then
February 2000.
Yeah, the next night in Norfolk, you were wrestling Chili Willy.
There you go. Right. Fun time. Chili Willy was great, dude. Yeah. Okay. So that makes sense. And then we kind of had 4 months to get our stuff together, and we started working there. Right.
Yeah. So you're working there, towards the end of the company. Can you kind of take me back and just because you always hear the stories about how chaotic things were at the end, can you take us back and so do you remember anything how?
Here's what I do remember. I remember working with Chris Hamrick and Easy Money. We were called the Hot Commodity.
Yep.
We were the heel tag team. We had, you might know better than me. We had the female,
was it Electra?
Electra, perfect, dude. So we had her at ringside, and when she had worked with Danny Doring and the Roadkill, they couldn't stand her because she never remembered her spots. But when she worked with she would just not get anything. It was just they just had problems. But with us, we had Hamrick and her. So Hamrick would tell her, hey, this is when you do this. And she was on everything with us. So for us, it was great because we had somebody to Iggy her. If she had to be Iggy by herself, she just forgot what was going on. She just watched it like you would, you know what I'm saying? Like any wrestling fan would watch it. She didn't. But yeah, so we had him. He could be like, all right, that's your spot. So we had everything worked out. So when we first went there, it was just, everything was smooth, real smooth. I don't think we noticed a problem. And this is us as our crew. That would be Joey Matthews, Christian York, Chris Hamrick, Easy Money, and myself. We were like a little group. We didn't notice any problems until the final end. So in other words, we worked there all summer, all fall. We did the pay-per-views. We did the TV tapings on the Nashville network. And everything was, for us, pretty smooth. Well, I think we might have heard stories about certain guys not getting paid. But we were on the low end of the pay scale. So I guess they could always pay us, right? So we never had any hey, we can't pay today. But we heard about the top guys, the guys who made real money who were probably getting stiffed a little bit. So it was not until the end that we noticed certain guys weren't making the house shows. Certain guys just there's no RVD this week. What? There's no RVD here? That kind of stuff. But the honest truth is, at my level, we didn't get any information except for we were doing the last set of house shows. It was probably Arkansas and Missouri. It was something crazy. We drove from our East Coast asses we crossed the Mississippi River on a car. I was like, oh my God. So anyways, we did that show. And then they said, listen, guys, we don't have anything for you guys next week. So we literally did a send off to ourselves with like beer and stuff in the ring because we knew that was the end. But I really didn't know it was the end until pretty much the last week. And then it was kind of like the story to us was, once we get funded, this guy's getting. There was like Fred Durst, you know who that guy is from that.
Yeah, I remember Fred Durst. Yeah,
he's in a band.
Yeah.
People like
they were like a band that made a bunch.
They were like a rap rock band everybody liked for a while. Remember him? I don't even know what the band's name was. You remember the name of the band?
Yeah, that was my favorite band in high school.
I was an old man, but Limp Bizkit was cool. So to me, they were like these just posing jabronis. I know he made a huge career and he's well known, but I couldn't stand him. And I'm a music nerd, so I like to listen to musicians that play music that studied it. And I'm a
music purists hate him. They do. Like
no, they're great. They did well for themselves, but I'm a music nerd. I literally listen to all the notes and I listen to the structure of the song. I listen to every instrument. Like I literally listen to the drummer, the bassist, the keyboard. I listen to everybody individually and then I see how it meshes together and I judge you by your individual players, not just how the whole thing, whatever. Anyways, but he was supposed to buy into ECW and there's a few other guys that were going to buy into ECW. So we waited and then one day we were watching ECW, and then I think Paul Heyman was their announcer on WWF Raw.
Yeah.
And we realized by like the spring of 2001 that, this thing's done. So we were always
that show was the first televised show that I ever attended live. The night that Paul Heyman showed up on Raw.
Whoa! And I think there was an issue with I want to say maybe Jerry Lawler had gotten let go for a while because maybe he had some problems with like an underage girl, or he ran for mayor and like did something wrong. I forget.
Yeah, that was the cat. Remember the cat?
Yes,
I remember. She got fired and he walked out on her behalf.
There you go. Smart move. So you remember everything. Yeah. There's no other words. Yes, he got fired. He left because she got fired. Right. I gotcha. So anyways, that's when I realized we were in trouble. And then I remember seeing Paul Heyman at a TV taping for WWE. And I was like, this is the time when Matt Hardy was having his 2.0 thing. Remember that whole thing?
Yeah.
And he had a couple minions. He had the guy with the mohawk. Remember him?
Yeah.
Shannon Moore.
Yeah. I want to say.
He had him and maybe another guy. And I was like, Paul Heyman in the back, can I work with Matt? I'll just be his nobody minion. He goes, dude, you're too good for that. We'll find something better for you. And then I never got a call. He totally lied to me in my face. Like, you're way too good for that. Really? Yeah. You're a minion of Matt Hardy? No way, dude. You're better than that. And then that was pretty much, I never, I might have done some more TV tapings, but there was no more talk of me ever doing anything. He just lied to me straight up. And that was the first time I ever heard of him lying to me personally. I was like, oh, he lied to me finally. Because he'd always heard about him lying to everybody at ECW. He never lied to ECW, but damn, he didn't lie to me on that TV taping, dude. He's like, dude, you're too good for that. And I was like, that's so funny. So,
I do have you here. This is Pine Bluff, Arkansas. It was the very last ECW show on record.
There you go.
Pine Bluff, Arkansas, January 13th, 2001. It was you and Joey. It was Christian York and Joey Matthews versus you and Easy Money.
Nice.
And, Matthews pinned you following a double power bomb.
I'm glad I could give him that final send off. Yeah, I don't remember that match that much. I just remember the weekend, but I don't remember the match at all, to be honest with you. But that's cool. I'm glad that we wrestled each other because we were good friends. So it's fun to get to work with those guys, which is great.
So now ECW's dead. You're kind of back in the indies, kind of in limbo a little bit, I guess.
Without a doubt. Yeah. There was a lot of indies though. It was still popular. Wrestling was still popular. I had a lot of work, and I actually was able to use that little ECW time to get booked a lot. So I was doing stuff in like Alaska and Texas and Trinidad. So it was actually a good time for me personally because I could charge more than the ECW was paying me. Yeah. So that was good. And I got to see more places and work with, so I actually personally, I enjoyed that period, even though the TV was gone.
You were still out there touring and living your dream.
Loved it, dude. Loved it. Yeah, that was like probably my favorite era because at that point I could do a lot of stuff and I could get booked a lot of places and I could make decent money from the ECW name. So it was definitely like a very busy period. I can remember doing like 8 shows in a row. It was like crazy, like 8 days in a row. Like it was like booked during the middle of the week. They would just be running random indie shows on a Tuesday and a Wednesday and a Thursday. So it was actually pretty good. Plus you could pick up your TV tapings on the Mondays. I didn't mind going to WWF TV tapings because I knew that was the only place to work. So I would take the book. I wasn't like, I'm too good for you guys to get beat up on TV. I would wrestle there happily and take the paydays as much as I could get them. It didn't bother me one bit.
Yeah, and I remember seeing you in 2001 a lot. It was you and Jimmy Cicero would pop up in the dark matches here in DC and Baltimore quite a bit. I saw you in a couple of matches with Essa Rios that year. or
Yeah,
Papa
and
Chulo.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm thinking of Aguilar, but that's him, Pape Chulo and S.A. Rios, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff going on back then. There was plenty of work. There was definitely a lot of work on the indies back then. I think that was pretty much the height of the I think WCW started going down a little bit. Maybe their TV wasn't as strong. I don't know. I think
like WCW was out of business a month
you're
after.
right. I'm thinking a year before that, right? So but there was still a lot of work for me. I remember that, and then you get your DV tapings from WWE if you could get them, which was cool, and it was still a good period. But then I went to TNA, and that was kind of fun.
So yeah, you're sitting in limbo for like a year and a half, doing your indies, doing the whole thing, and then you get this call for TNA. I remember you being a part of a group. You were one of Raven's guys in a group called Gathering.
Right.
And, there was another guy in that group.
It's funny how I keep making these connections with these other dudes that become massive.
You want to know what? You're making these guys look so good.
Oh no,
they're just going on and doing bigger and better things. So
there's a difference. I'll tell you what the difference is between me and them. But anyways,
so
there's a big difference.
You're working with CM Punk during this time.
Yeah, and he wasn't originally there though, which is interesting. It was Mickey and I and Raven at first.
And Mickey, she was Alexis Lurie at the time.
My fault, right? Alexis Lurie and I with Raven, and then I believe at some point there was a need to bring in another guy, and I believe the reason was because we were fighting with who's the devil?
James Mitchell.
You're good with names, dude. Yeah, good for you. So James, you're really my names are. I know who everybody is, but I can't pull a name out of my head. Like the drawer's shut. I got a picture of him.
This was like the heyday of my fandom. So like I remember.
All right, cool. So so we did his. He had a big crew. I remember he had the guy that went to WWE for a while who did like the carnival gimmick. I'm sure you remember who he is. I don't remember. He had long hair and he did a short stint with WWE, but he was like he did I forget. He was a pretty cool dude. Anyway, so he had him and he had a crew of guys, and they would outnumber us. So I think that's when we brought in CM Punk to be part of our crew, and that rounded out the Gathering pretty well. And I remember we did feuds with Jeff Jarrett. So there's a match on YouTube with Mickey and I versus Jeff Jarrett, and Jeff Jarrett was feuding with Raven. So at the beginning, I don't think we were feuding with the Devil yet, but as the storyline went on, we flipped. Somehow we became baby faces and feuded with the Devil and his crew.
I would hope you'd be a babyface during the fight with the Devil. I would hope.
Say it again.
I would hope you would be a babyface during a fight with the
Devil. Yeah, you're right. So and then there was James Mitchell, who I liked a lot. He's a really good person. I actually enjoyed hanging out with him. I actually knew him from WCW too. So, but then we turned on Raven, and that was kind of cool. So CM Punk and I turned on Raven, and we beat the crap out of him. And he would bring in different legends. So we'd end up wrestling Raven and Sabu, Raven and Terry Funk, Raven and Sandman, Raven and Mikey Whipwreck. He just kept bringing all these ECW guys for us every weekend or every week, and we would fight all these dudes. So we were getting a pretty good run. So it was actually a really fun time. I don't think we ever won their tag titles, but we definitely got a lot of exposure and wins in that organization. I think all setting up for an eventual showdown would have Raven, get the big send off, but on the way to that send off, we kept beating all these guys. So we had a very good run. And there's a lot of YouTube stuff of that stuff. There's CM Punk and Julio Dinero versus a ton of guys and guys that really made it after our match. They were not popular in TNA yet, but Matt Sydal was there with us, and the guys that became one of the guys that was in a tag team where they did the 1950s gimmick with Snuka's son.
Domino.
Domino was there with blonde hair and huge as a house, dude. So if you ever spent any time looking at the old TNA stuff, I mean, we wrestled a lot of good talent there. We wrestled Umaga, I think, over there at some point when he might have been in between WWE and he went there to work. So we had a lot of really, really good matches there. It was a really fun experience. I definitely enjoyed the TNA experience. Was really fun. We got like a big push and it was a lot of fun. So I definitely enjoyed that. Good.
That is awesome. I do you kind of go back to the indies here a little bit after this TNA run, and I remember running into you when you worked for KCW because I would come up there with Scott every once in a while.
Right.
What were your thoughts on working for KCW and Cato?
Wow. So KCW was perfect because what they would do is they'd run shows every 2 weeks. So I had already picked up my real job, which I still have now, was for a company called United Rentals, and we rent and sell construction equipment, and I was working my way to being a sales rep, and now I'm a sales rep and I'm doing phenomenal. Yay for me. But at the time I had to start out working in their like brick and mortar portion. Right now, I run out in a truck and I visit customers, and I go to construction sites and I find out what equipment they need and I try to rent it or sell it to them. So at the time I had to work there and answer the phones. It was a terrible job. It was a really bad job, but I needed it. So, but it gave me benefits we didn't have. Seriously, dude, I hated my job there. So I had to answer the phone. I had to deal with customers. They'd walk in the store, and we sold like little tools and stuff. And then we'd book people's big equipment, excavators and boom lifts and generators and forklifts and all that stuff. But you just had to deal with the public in a way that I wasn't used to. And I had to be at work at 6:30 in the morning every day, 5 days. I used to get home at 6:30 in the morning from these wrestling shows, dude. There was times in TNA where I literally would be awake until our plane left at 5:30 in the morning from Nashville. I would just stay awake. What's the point? Why would I go to sleep? So we party all night and whatever else you can do. And then there's no reason to sleep for 3 hours. I would just stay awake, catch my plane and sleep then. Anyway, so then I had to get this new job. But anyways, the point is, I did that stuff, and KCW was great because it was every 2 weeks. I would pick up other bookings, but it was solid, and I really enjoyed his crew of guys. Were not the most well-known crew of guys, but he had really good talent. So you could wrestle good wrestlers all the time. And Scott Fowler was a lot of fun. They had a guy named Seabass over there who was a lot of fun.
Sebastian, I remember him.
Sebastian was great. I mean, still is probably great if he's still doing it. Brock Singleton, who's from Virginia.
I remember Brock.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with him. So, and Ken's League was a lot of fun. So I definitely enjoyed it, and it kept me in wrestling. Because there was a time when I had a regular job 5 days a week, and I also worked for my dad, who was an accountant, and I also worked as a bouncer at the 930 Club in Washington, D.C. So I had like 3 gigs.
Wow.
I
remember the 930. I remember going to the 930 Club. It's I kind of miss it right now with the pandemic going on. But
I miss working there. It wasn't like a high paying gig, but I liked being a bouncer there, and I also liked seeing lots of bands. I'm a music nerd, like I told you, and I didn't even like half the bands I saw, but just like the atmosphere. And it was a cool job. And a lot of the people that worked there knew me from wrestling, which is kind of weird. So they called me Julio, and even though that's not my real name. But anyway, so I thought it'd be funny. But anyways, KCW was really good.
So you bring up that 930 Club thing. There was a rumor going around for a while that you actually bounced with Batista. Is that true?
Not a good rumor. No, not a good rumor.
No, not a good one.
Wow, that'd be cool. If I was friends with him, I'd probably be working in Hollywood right now or something. I'd be like his little stand-in. Like, oh, the light's going to be on. Just stand there until Batista gets here. But no, I didn't get that gig. But anyways, so no, I never worked with him. I know that he was a bouncer in D.C. before he went to AFA and Sika's school and then got picked up to go to, OVW or whatever. But I never ran into him because I did that after ECW was over, and he'd already become a major star by the time.
That makes sense.
So the time frame was off. I mean, it's a funny rumor. Anyone could you could put 2 and 2 together, but the timing was off. So I never did that. I don't know if he even bounced there. I just know he may have bounced in DC, but I'm not sure he was I think I would have heard if he was a 930 Club guy. I think I would have heard about it by being there. Oh, you didn't know Batista worked here, so never heard that.
Well, Julio, I've got to say, for somebody who isn't a Hall of Famer right now, or somebody who isn't on television, you had yourself a pretty impressive career. I've got to say,
it was a lot of fun. Let's put it that way. I feel like I could have done better, but in other words, could have been like more well known. I think I had the skill set, but I think I didn't have the on-screen personality to radiate to the masses, and I wasn't very good at the promo portion of it. I'm a really good communicator, but I don't think I could communicate in a way that pro wrestling needed me to communicate. Like, I'm very good at yapping. I could talk for an hour. You can't even shut me up on the show. But that's not always what gets you marketability in wrestling. Because I would do my promos, and I never really felt like if I was me, I wasn't that interesting as far as and then I had to play somebody like playing Raven's guy. He wasn't really. It was hard because he wasn't like, well, your character needs to be like this. So I never really had that direction. So a lot of times I feel like I didn't excel at the on-screen portion. The in-ring portion, wow, fun, great, did all the stuff pretty well. But it was the on-screen when the camera was on. I wasn't the greatest communicator as far as like who I was as a wrestler. So all the young guys watching, just get your personality as a wrestler. Don't if it's you turned up to 10% or turn up to 11, that's cool. But find out who you are when you get in the ring, and find out who you are when you talk. Because I think that was what kind of held me back a little bit. But I still enjoyed my career, and I wouldn't change it for anything. So it's good.
Absolutely. An impressive career once again. And, Julio, I just want to go ahead and thank you for being on the show. It was a pleasure having you here, and it was great to hear about your career once again.
Hey, man, thanks for having me on. And if I ever book you for a show, I'm going to name you Erratic Mike Raddick. How do you feel about
yes,
that?
I remember you used to call me that. What started that? It was like we would always try to
rhymed, I think. It just needed to have a name for you. So I think Erratic Mike Raddick would work great.
I think it was like we tried to connect for bookings a couple of times, and like things would happen, like where I'd have a show and then it kind of wouldn't happen, and
that's possible.
That's easy.
That's possible. Yeah, I don't have the origin of it. I'm sure Scott Fowler would know the origin of Erratic Mike Raddick, but definitely remember that. And did you ever book Christian York for your TV? You ran some TV shows at a studio somewhere. Was it Montgomery County?
Yeah, it was in Montgomery County. We didn't have Christian York on those. Like that was pre-TV when we booked him. We booked him against a South African wrestler. It was actually PJ Black's little brother.
Oh, really? In real life?
Yeah.
Really? Cool.
Yeah, it was Zizou Madu. He came over from South Africa to work for Ring of Honor for a little bit.
Nice, dude.
Yeah.
And where I used to live in Montgomery County, Silver Spring. So where would you film these shows?
So we did this out of a studio, Montgomery Community Television. It was over there
in Rockville.
It was it's like between Rockville and Gaithersburg and Durwood. It was over there.
I know Durwood. Okay, cool. Yeah. All right,
yeah,
cool.
But we had a lot of fun doing it. For an independent, we had a very, very well produced television show. Thanks to Mike Valentine and a couple of the other talents that were down there. They had a phenomenal crew.
Is it visible? Like I can find it online if I wanted to?
Yes, if you actually look up Fight Pro Wrestling on YouTube,
Pro.
Yeah, Fight Pro Wrestling.
Perfect. I'll check it out.
Different take on professional wrestling, but all 27 episodes are on there.
Nice. All right. Well, I'll check that out because I'm interested in seeing it. So that's cool.
But Julio, it was a pleasure having you. I'd look forward to having you back on the show at some other point in time.
Cool. No problem.
We'll have to put.
And I want to say everything. So I want to say hello and thank you to all my Maryland wrestling fans because that's my home. I may live in New York now, earning a living, but Maryland is home for me and always will be. So I just want to make sure I got on TV with you guys and got to express myself to the hometown heroes of Maryland wrestling. So appreciate it.
Excellent. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our interview with Julio Dinero. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope to see you back next week. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoyed our interview with Julio Dinero. That was a great interview.
That was excellent, man.
Yeah, it was an absolutely phenomenal interview.
Yeah, and I just want to point out one thing, too. Like, I love this guy a lot more, him being a massive Miami Dolphins fan.
Yes, I know. You're a massive Miami Dolphins fan.
I am a massive Miami Dolphins fan. I'm not showing it right now, but I really am, and he just tons of brownie points right there for me. So.
Yeah.
And we're about to win tonight.
Our boy Scott Fowler here in the chat, he's a Miami Dolphins fan.
Well,
too.
I like Scott a lot more already.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Scott's good people.
Good people. Yeah, well, he's a Dolphins fan. So.
Yeah, well, he's a Dolphins fan.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys been waiting for a while. I'm hoping it happens for you this year.
The cap off to the weirdest year of 2020 would be a Miami Dolphins Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So I'm rooting for it.
I mean, even if you go deep into playoffs, I'm happy. If you go deep into playoffs and lose, I'm happy for you because you guys, if anybody deserves a good season, it's
us.
Dolphins.
I mean, how do you hate us?
Yeah,
I mean, we've sucked for so long.
I know.
But screw the Jets.
Yeah, fuck the Jets.
I'm glad they're losing. Yeah, fuck the Jets.
But guys, anyway, now it's time for the moment you've all been waiting for. Ladies and gentlemen, I know you guys have been waiting. You want to find out how to become the next World Heavyweight Champion. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to have a raffle for this very championship. Now, here's how this is going to work. About an hour after we go off the air here, there's going to be a link on MikeRaddick.com/the podcast pit. There's going to be a link on our year-end award show, which is going to continue. Since Rennes is not here with us this week, we're going to do the year-end award show next week. So once we sign off here, you're going to have another 7 days to vote for the year-end awards. However, also on that page is going to be a place you can go ahead and participate in the raffle. It is going to be a $15 entry fee. Now, here's how this is going to work. The $15 entry fee gets you in. Every time you share this podcast or share our page, it is going to be an extra entry in to the raffle.
That's a damn good deal.
It is a damn good deal. It is an investment.
I'm looking at this belt right now. I've been sitting behind it all night. This is legit.
This belt is a $150 value right here.
Yeah, like I want to walk out with it, but it's not. I'm not going.
I know you haven't won it yet.
Yeah, I haven't.
You haven't won it yet. You'll have your chance.
I will,
just like everyone else. But we're going to go ahead next week on the year-end awards. We are going to have a virtual wheel up on the screen, and your entries will be on that virtual wheel, and the winner will walk out World Heavyweight Champion. We'll have you on the studio. We'll bring you in the week after. You'll be a special guest on the podcast pit, and you'll walk out with the World Heavyweight Championship.
That's the easiest championship win since the Finger Poke of Doom.
Yeah,
So
I must say. And you know what? We don't walk out with Hollywood Hogan as champion, so it's a good day.
That'd be weird if that happened.
It would be weird. I hope Hollywood Hogan enters enters the raffle just so he can bury people one more time.
All right, everybody tweet Hogan. Let's see what we can get here.
Yes, and Scott Fowler is already tweeting Tua.
Tua time, baby. I'm with you.
Yeah, it's Tua time.
It's Tua time.
It's Tua time. 8:30. It's going to be Tua time,
It's
ladies
actually
and gentlemen.
8:15,
For all you
but,
Miami, 8:15.
8:15.
You get an 8:15 start time,
Yep,
huh?
we do.
All right. Well, hey, 8:15 start time, Miami Dolphins, ladies and gentlemen. For all you Fins fans out there,
Fins up.
Fins up. All right. I'm a Ravens fan, but hey, Fins up.
We can't all be perfect. It's okay.
Well, hey, we got one thing in common. My Dolphins fans and Ravens fans, we both hate the fucking Patriots.
Absolutely. Fuck the Patriots.
With a fiery passions. And
There's the
LAJ
bell.
over here, LAJ over here is from Boston, so I hope I didn't offend.
Oh, really? Man, I was starting to like you.
Oh man. All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, it has been a fun episode. We hope you enjoyed our interview with Julio Dinero. We hope to see Rennis back next week in this very chair. Kyle did a wonderful job filling in.
I was mediocre at best, but I'm cool with it.
Hey.
So thanks for having me on, man.
What, 3.5 stars from Meltzer?
Yeah, I'd say about, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but that was fun. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you here.
Yeah, always a good time.
Glad to have you here. And Rennis, we look forward to seeing you back next week. And Brian Carbaugh, it was good to see you in the chat once again.
Absolutely.
Especially with your Butch Ass comments. We missed them so much. But ladies and gentlemen, we are out. Next week, we will see you. Same podcast time, same podcast channel.
This is the podcast pit, brought to you by Ben Media.